from the Heinrich Boell Foundation US, the digital team, and she is one of our wonderful supporters and collaborators on this project across this season and the past ones. We also have Jimmy Garver and Elena Casas on the call, who were our editorial team supreme. And then we have some of our writers. I'm sorry, there's so many people to just introduce. Mariana Diaz Hernandez and Sebastian Bravo, who are also on the call. I think we'll be joined in a little bit from some of the others, and maybe I'm missing someone. And we have, oh, and Lucia, there you are, Lucia. I'm seeing your square in the corner. Lucia Agana Rojas, who was a writer for our project in Brazil. We'll have lots of opportunities to ask questions to some other people, but I just wanted to quickly call those folks out. And yes, more people are joining. Hello, everyone. I am going to share my screen just because it makes it easier to play clips. 1 second. Oh, if you don't mind muting, that would be wonderful. Hi, Joaquin. Joaquin Cuevas is here. He is one of the writers and illustrators for the comic book. And let me do, I don't know why it's not letting me share.
Hi, everyone.
What is happening? Sorry, of course, there's technical issues whenever you need to show something.
Yeah, that's always the case whenever we wanna, get fancy and show stuff. Always assume there's one thing or another to prevent it.
There we go. It was at the bottom. All right. I've learned from the last time, you got to click the share sound. I'm a pro. All right. You think we haven't been doing this for many years. And let's swap this. We should be good to go. All right, everybody. Official beginnings. Thanks so much for joining. As I said, I'm here from the ADAPT Project, and we've been working with a number of amazing organizations to build a network to share best practices around data privacy policy and politics, thinking about what data protection looks like in these countries, what are the challenges that privacy advocacy groups are facing, and how can we kind of come together to confront some of those challenges and build resources and have dialogue and debate. I also mentioned that Sabine Muscat is here from the Heinrich Boell Foundation. They're one of our biggest supporters, but we are going to kind of treat this like a conversation. So I just want to pass it over to Sabine to explain why and how the Boell Foundation got involved in this project and why you wanted to support this work. Maybe I can pause share and everybody can see Sabine. Can everyone see?
And I have to unmute myself.
Yes, you do.
I'm still seeing the screen. That's fine too. Either way. Yeah, just hello everybody, and welcome from my side as well. And it's really wonderful to see the collaborators of this project, to see so many of you. This is a fascinating and inspiring project. And yeah, thanks to Laura and thanks to Internews and the whole ADAPT network for putting this together. This is great. So just for those of you very briefly who may not know the Heinrich Boell Foundation, or the Heinrich Boell Stiftung as it is in German, we are one of the German political foundations. We are, well, our mission and values is close to the German Green Party, but we also have offices around the world, and including in Latin America, Brazil. We have an office in Colombia, El Salvador, Mexico, Chile, and we have offices all over Africa as well. Nigeria is one of them. And yeah, as you can see on the slide, we work with civil society and we promote transatlantic and global dialogue with the goal to strengthen democracy and human rights, to promote inclusion and equity and equality, especially gender equality, and also to foster sustainable growth and innovation. And so for us, all of these things translate to the digital space. Well, first of all, of course, the digital transformation like benefits societies. We have to make sure it benefits the societies and the planet and doesn't like exceed our planetary limits. And I do think we share the conviction with Internews, and I especially share that as a former journalist as well, that digital rights are human rights, and that a safe digital space and an informed civil society are key for protecting democracy in the digital age. And I've noticed through my work that the notion of that data collection may endanger my security or that algorithms may violate my rights is very abstract to many internet users. And you see that around the world and in your societies. And many people only realize those risks when it's maybe too late. I mean, look at pregnant women in the United States or in Brazil these days, and you'll hear about that in one of the podcasts as well. And I love how this project uses fictional methods to illustrate these things and maybe taking the liberty to exaggerate sometimes, but that's good because it's fiction. But as you'll hear in some of the podcasts, like take a look at the Ecuador one later, take a listen, where reality can actually be scarier than fiction. So this is why we're supporting this, because we think this is such a great way to make sure that the debate about data protection, data privacy can engage a broader audience that makes it very visible and understandable why this affects us all.
Thank you, Sabina.
Yeah, thank you. And I wanted to take the chance to, Sabine, just open the conversation about the stories that we're telling and how we're telling them, because one of the things that we wanted to share with you and talk about were specifically why we chose fiction, why we chose audio, why are we having this approach. And so I'm going to throw that ball to Laura so we can start that conversation on the ways that we are telling these stories, why telling these stories, why fiction, why audio, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I think that as part of the ADAPT project, anyone who's on the call who has been a fellow or been working with us, you know that much of the work that we've done has been about providing support and resources on really complicated things like writing draft laws and regulations, talking to policymakers and companies, and also thinking about how to do enforcement. And all of that stuff is really complicated and really high level. But one thing that just kept coming up over and over again was the fact that there's, in a lot of places, not really a culture of privacy. We hear the refrain over and over again from our friends and family, why should I care? Or you know, I've done nothing wrong, so I have nothing to worry about. Or even I think more and more people are moving away from that and into there's nothing I can do about it. It's just the way the internet is. And so we wanted to probe that a little bit and really think about how we get people to care and bring that into the work that we were doing and build opportunities and trainings and spaces to build capacity around better storytelling and communications. And, you know, you can think of that as far as new audiences. You'll see in our project that we collaborated with Internet Bolivia. They worked with some really wonderful comic book artists and writers. And when you think about the fans for that community and how they can be brought in, that's one thing. But also new collaborators. Many people on this call are the people who participated in this project, and some of them had never worked on digital rights issues before, really thought about, you know, in a critical way their technology use. So we'll hear from some of the creatives that we've involved. And then again, new skills. Many people involved in this work are lawyers, and lawyers are amazing. I am always blown away, but when it comes to storytelling, sometimes that could use a little pushing. So that's the sort of why for this But yeah, I don't want to take up too much time to talk about that, and we can have more of this conversation at the end, and we will as we go through. But I think we can also move to some clips. So the first, let me see if I can click through. Can you all see again? Oh no, all right, can you see my screen?
Yeah, like we can see the screen, and we have
Cool.
the page on Ecuador, right?
Yeah,
Brazil.
it said, yeah, we've got the Ecuador page. So first we want to ask, we have Sebastian Bravo Montenegro, who wrote this story with us. The story was produced in partnership with Fundación Ciudadanía y Desarrollo in Ecuador. And the story is inspired by a true story. So I'm just going to play one clip and then we'll have a question back to Sebastian. Let me know if you can hear this, please unmute and yell at me.
You called me?
We got hacked.
Yes, everyone already knows that.
Explain this to me.
Let's see, I'm not an expert on the subject, but
You are the IT guy.
I do online payments, not cybersecurity.
Just talk, Jimmy.
Henry.
Whatever.
Look, every company has personal data, right? Like names, ID, account numbers, emails.
Okay, but that information is useless.
Not necessarily, you see, like it serves as the basis for any scam. People are no longer emailing you saying that they are the Prince Abdul of Nigeria. Scammers can call you and use your data information to confirm your identity and then ask you for your card number, for example. Or nowadays, the emails look absolutely real. They say account to be closed. You open it and there's the BNE logo, the design, everything looks the same. You click on the link and then they have access to your entire cell phone, where you live, who you write to, your contacts. And if you have a contact that's written mom, they will write her to talk about your debts and other things.
Oh my God, all people fall for that.
In our case, it's much worse because I realized this morning with Graciela that the bank has our usernames and passwords.
In other words, they can empty our entire account.
That's normal.
No, it's not.
It's not. How do we provide the if you forgot your password service?
The password should only be between the client and the program. It's encrypted.
Explain it so a child could understand, please.
Okay, so the password is a tomato and the encryption is a blender. When the customer puts the tomato in the blender, we get a red sauce. And every time the customer puts in their password, the system confirms it's the same red sauce.
That's the same as knowing the password.
No, because even though we know it's a red sauce, there's no way for us to unblend that sauce and find out if it's actually like a tomato or a red pepper, for example. But things get worse.
I give up. I don't want to know it anymore. No, go on. Come on, tell me everything.
In our case with Vanessa, we just have so much more information. We have information on loans, purchasing habits, shopping habits, etc.
Why does a Russian hacker care that I want to go to Puerto Vallarta?
Because they know which airline you're using, the dates you're going, the destination, and then they will sell that information to tourism companies, in your case, Grace. And then you get a WhatsApp from an anonymous number offering a service that you never asked for.
But Henry, selling personal data is unethical, I know. But the bank has been doing it for years.
Carolyn, that's illegal now. You can't just sell people's data without their permission nowadays. I mean, imagine that I go to the bank and I ask something so simple as if Evelyn has an account here.
They won't tell you, obviously.
Exactly, because it's private, confidential information. So why can't the bank say no to the person at the teller window, but yes to a corporation that's looking to buy your data?
It's a standard practice for companies in Ecuador. It generates income, and that is an important thing.
Yeah, but the law says otherwise.
You still haven't explained to me how we ended up in this situation.
The hackers accessed all of the information through servers, which don't have a very high security level.
We pay a lot of money to a company abroad.
But they didn't enter through the abroad servers. They entered through Ecuador. Our internal system is a mess, and it's so easy to access that almost all employees have access.
All right. I know that was a bit of a long one, but you also heard our friend Sebastian, who wrote and also played poor Henry, the IT guy. Hi, Sebastian.
Yeah,
Hello,
and
everyone.
I really want to say that that's how I explain encryption to my family now. This is the metaphor of the red sauce is just perfect. And I think this was a beautiful opportunity, a beautiful experience to exchange, the different ways in which we explain things. As Laura was saying before, a lot of these issues are told and talked about by so many experts when we're really hoping that this could be part of a wider conversation. So I would like to ask Sebastian now that we saw your brilliant work, both as a playwright and as an actor, and we enjoyed so much working with you and working in this story. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit, how it felt to write about this event that really happened, but how we could imagine it differently, how the process was, and also what you learned from this process.
Yes. First of all, I would like to thank everybody who participated in this project. It was such an amazing process from the beginning, because right from the get-go, I realized that I was like,
the volume?
There. Can you hear me? Yes. All right. I was definitely not aware of anything having to do with data protection laws or what that even meant. So once I started researching, I think someone said it before, I realized that like fiction could never go as dark as reality has already. And when I realized that there was the 2019 data leak of, I think it was like 18 million users, if not more, I was like, just like shocked that this would even happen, and that it wasn't even like it was an event because people lost access to their accounts, but it wasn't an event in the sense of like it was the violation of our rights. And so throughout this process, when I was talking to Ricardo and Marianne, who actually explained it the way that I put it in the podcast, where I was like, I don't understand. So she was like, all right, here's a blender, this is the password. And I was like, oh, okay. Once I started researching, it was really like amazing to find how vulnerable we are as citizens, how vulnerable we are as users. And for me, that was like a really scary experience. It was also like an inspirational part of it too. Once I figured out, okay, I understand the issue now. What am I going to do about it as a citizen, as a person? And that's where Ricardo, who was the producer from Fundación Ciudadanía y Desarrollo, came in to kind of explain what are activists doing in Ecuador to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And it doesn't happen on such a large scale as it did in 2019. And so it's really great because they have proposed a law which went into effect last year. So it's been a year and 3 months already. And in the law, it stated that they have 2 years to come up with the reglamento. So like the implementation of the law has 2 years to happen, which is kind of worrying at this point because the actual government hasn't said anything. And so they're halfway through their time, but they haven't figured out like the reglamento, the implementation of what will happen. So we have a law that dictates, this is a crime and this is not okay, and like the list of things that are happening, but it doesn't say what are the consequences. So that's kind of the space that we are in right now in Ecuador, is this kind of middle ground of knowing that data protection needs a law, but not being fully there in terms of its implementation. But everything working with this project has been a really eye-opening experience for me. First it was scary, now it's kind of inspirational in the sense of like, all right, I'm gonna be like on these events, I'm gonna make sure that these call centers are not calling me anymore, because now I'm like, every time they call me, I'm like, how'd you get my number? Like, who sold you my data? And so they like hang up, and now I know that they won't be calling me again. But it's still a huge issue that I feel like I'm talking to all my friends. I'm also a middle school and high school teacher, so I'm telling all my students, how are you protecting your data? Are we checking our settings as part of our classroom? Like check our settings, see what information does do our apps ask of us, and what are they going to do with that information, and what do you want? What are you consenting to? And some of them really want their apps to have all the information so that they can get better recommendations, and some of them don't. And I think that that's the cool thing about it, is that it's a choice at the end. it's an informed choice.
Amazing.
hold
Ricardo,
me?
oops.
We
I
got
want to
hacked.
play,
Yeah.
and it already started, a little bit to follow up on what you were saying. Our Ricardo from SCD was supposed to be here, but he's stuck on a late flight. But I want to follow your comment on the law and the regulations, which is something that I know SCD's advocacy has been really pushing forward, and it's hard to talk about things like regulation. So I'll play this clip because I think you did a really wonderful job in the writing.
Yes, everyone already knows that.
Explain
Oh
this
wait,
to
this
me.
is the
then.
other one. You can't really see when they're just white dots.
We're trending on Twitter, and not in a good way. I'm trying to defend ourselves from my personal account and those from my brand.
How could this happen?
Because we don't follow simple protocols.
It was a rhetorical question, you moron.
Fernando, calm down.
I'm just saying that companies at this level should follow simple processes for payments, paying servers, limiting employee access. It's what the law states.
Fernando, you are the lawyer. I just Googled it and the law passed in 2021.
Yeah, it did happen, but there are no regulations.
Do you know that selling data is illegal?
If it's illegal in quotes.
Did you forget to mention that we're basically using Vanessa to sell more data? Damn, this is why Charlie left us. Because to you, everything is a gray area
Evelyn,
and...
calm down. Ecuador is a mess. Crime is on the rise, poverty is at an all-time high, and the pandemic isn't over yet. Do you think people care if a company sells their data or not? They don't even know what personal data is. They have already forgotten about Nova Estrat.
Nova what?
See? At the end of the day, people care if their money's on the account and nothing else.
The legal consequences of this.
Do you know what is beautiful about living in a country like Ecuador? The beautiful thing is that they tell you that something is wrong, but they never tell you what happens if you screw up.
This could go wrong.
There are no regulations.
You keep talking about regulations and I don't know what the hell that
Every
means.
law in Ecuador must have a regulation. It's like the list of consequences if you break the rules. The government tells us, do not sell people's personal data. And I answer back, what are you going to do to me if I do it? And then the government will respond, I'll be right back. The law is worth nothing if there are no regulations.
And what if someone sues us?
Who?
To the prosecutor's office? I don't know.
Evelyn, there is no government organization that regulates these cases. No one can do anything to us.
How are we going to solve this, Fernando?
So again, I wanted to punt a question back to Ricardo about what they're doing, but if you're interested in learning more about the advocacy that SCD is doing and the process of establishing the regulations, feel free to check out their resources and reach out to them. Nope, don't play that again. All right, we're gonna move on to our next project. And that is Data-Cheery 2.0, which is both a comic book and an audio fiction written by Mariane Diaz-Hernandez, who's here with us, and based on the comic book by Alejandro Barrientos and Joaquin Cuevas. I know Joaquin is here. I don't know if Alejandro was able to join. And in collaboration with Internet Bolivia, I know Eliana's here as well. I think we will play the clip and then ask a couple questions. All right.
You have to free yourselves from their chains. You have to protect yourselves from the Data-Cheery.
What is he talking about? What is that about the Data-Cheery?
Well, I was very young, so I don't remember, but what I understand is that it's some kind of monster that steals your identity. It kind of comes and gets into your dreams and thoughts and histories and pulls out everything that's there. I imagine it as a giant vacuum cleaner. But I guess everyone imagines it differently.
A monster? Like a mythological being or something?
Well, the truth is that no one knows if it is a real monster or just a myth. The computer attack that the Prof talks about did happen, and all the biometric data in the public and private databases was stolen. Some hackers called themselves data cherries. How we got from there to people believing there was a monster, one that feeds on the data, look, I couldn't tell you. But I think it's something that people say to explain the reason why they accumulated so much power and why we lost so much. Democracy, stability, the ability to choose our jobs and control our lives. Because with all that data, they could put pressure on institutions, control companies, take down politicians. They could do many things. Chaos makes people believe lots of things.
So that is from Data Cherry 2.0. I'll go back to the other slide. I feel like we're perpetually muting people in whack-a-mole, so if you can mute yourself, that would be great. Marianne, that was a clip from the story you wrote about the comic that was developed by Joaquin and Alejandro in collaboration with Internet Bolivia. For background, the story is set in this dystopian universe that is also the Altopia comic universe, another comic by Alejandro Barrientos and Joaquin Cuevas. It's set in 2043. Can you talk a little bit about, as someone who both is a creative writer and works on digital rights activism, how it was to collaborate with a variety of creatives? I know we asked you to look at the comic book and interpret it. The comic book's a little bit different from what the radio drama ended up sounding like. And it was also really difficult, I know, to see a comic book universe and then turn it into a script. So can you talk about any of that?
Yes, it was very challenging, I would say. The comic book is a wonderful creation. It's very, obviously because it is a comic book, but also because of the way, specific way it is made. It is very visual, so it relies a lot on this atmosphere that has to do with the colors that are being used, that has to do sometimes with abstract things that are very difficult to translate into audio when you lose all of the visual possibilities of the story. And also there was a work of translation for a more global audience, and it's not that the comic is not understandable by a global audience, but there were a lot of things that had to be explained a little bit more or grounded a little bit more in order to be understandable in audio, in an audio format. So it was extremely interesting and a very enriching experience because I'm not used to working from someone else's ideas and someone else's characters and stories. And this was such a rich universe, and having gotten the opportunity to develop more of that in order to explain a bit more, but within the realms of storytelling, the possible consequences of data mining, which is basically what the story is about, and its relationship with the body, which is one of my key topics of research. It was a very enriching opportunity. It was, again, very challenging. I hope people like it when they hear it. And now I think it is a wonderful thing that we have now this story in what it amounts to be 2 different versions, because the stories are different, not entirely, but are pretty different. So you can read it in the comic and then read to a different way of telling the story, hear it in the podcast. So it was a lot of fun, and I'm quite happy with the results, and quite happy with the opportunity to collaborate with these wonderful creators.
Thank you, Mary.
And yeah, I was going to say, by the way, that there are a lot of comments about the comic and the illustrations. People really appreciating the beauty of the work that's been done by Joaquin and Alejandro, and you can find the link in the chat if you wanna see the comic. And so I wanted to take a question precisely to you, to Joaquin. If you could maybe tell us a little bit more about the development of the story and the work that you did in the illustration and how you developed this idea, or we could even call it a character. You know, it's a character that everybody talks about, but nobody actually sees. It's this invisible thing that is very present nonetheless. Can you tell us a little bit more of how you conceived this idea of the data chip?
Of course. Hi, everyone. Here in La Paz, in our city, we have a sister city, which is El Alto. It's mostly Aymara city. It grew very fast from the 80s to now. Like in 40 years, it became a almost 2 million people city. And what is interesting about this sister city is that it has many contrasts. They have a lot of ancient heritage and traditions and mythology mixed with very modern stuff, high-tech buildings and things like that. So that inspired us to make a comic book called Altopia. Altopia, if you want, Altopia, which mix the two words, like El Alto, the city of El Alto, with dystopia or utopia. That depends the point of view. And that's the universe where the story is in. A city of El Alto 30 years in the future. That's the beginning of the comic Altopia. And in this story in particular, in Datachiri 2.0 or 2.0, we put the story 10 years before, and Alejandro, who's the writer, was inspired by a myth called Kariciri, Karikari. It has many names, or Likichiri. Likichiri means like the one that stores the, how you say, grasa in the body, the grease in the body. It's a mythological being. Yeah, that's it. A mythological being that steals that from your body and then sell it back to you. If you walk alone in the dark in the high plains in El Altiplano from Bolivia, he can appears and steals your tarp, and you get sick. And then he comes back a few days after and sell it to you again to recover from the illness. So he used this metaphor to talk about digital security. He uses this metaphor to talk about that data chip, a mythological, we don't know if it's a myth or not, that steals your data and then sell it back to you when you are ill, when you get sick. So that was the origin of the story, and I hope you like it. And I'm very, very surprised, and I like a lot the audio product that became after.
Gracias, Joaquin.
Thank you.
And thank you for telling me the right pronunciation for Altopia. It's been wonderful working with you. I just want to pass it over quickly until before we move to Brazil, our Brazil project, to quickly ask Eliana Juarez, who is from Internet Bolivia, about how the comic has been received in La Paz and in Bolivia, and how it's building this collaboration and this creative project has been for your advocacy.
Hi, hello. Do you hear me?
Yes.
So first, it's glad to be here. and hear about all the amazing episodes you created and all the creation of the artists. So it was amazing for us because, as you mentioned, Laura, sometimes our work is very focused on the laws and the institutionality in our country. And that seems to be very serious and very far apart, but far away from the people. And we are actually working for the people. So not only us as a non-profit, but also the artists. So try to this experience to join these two initiatives or these two concerns about how to talk with the people about these topics that sometimes seem to be too serious, too difficult to communicate, was amazing. It's always, to work with artists is always a very, it calls to some part of our community, our being humans, that is multiplies our capacities. So it was amazing. And of course, Alejandro and Joaquin are very famous here in Bolivia. They had this Altopia comic book that was a bestseller. So we build upon that. And it was, of course, a complete honor to work with them, but also with Marianne. Marianne is also a world-recognized artist. So for us, it was a way to understand that we have other ways to communicate, and we have to explore. We should explore that. People are in touch with art. So it's a way also to communicate our concerns and our work. So I hope it's not, of course, the last time to work with artists, to work with not only comic books and not only podcast, but also other ways of communicating with people. And it was also a very important and relevant experience to work with you, especially, and then in ADAPT Project. Yeah, that's it. Our experience was the whole time really rewarding, and thank you all to all the artists and to you and Internews for the opportunity.
Thanks, Eliana. Okay, I think we'll move to our work with coding rights. Hold on, somehow I'm paused. Yeah, no, I don't want to play that again.
Do you see the cameras outside?
Okay. I'm happy to introduce this. Lau, I think I'll hand it over to you to introduce this one.
Thank you. So yes, this is also a super special project and really nice episode. It was written by Lucia, that we're really happy to have here, together with Joanna Baron from Coding Rights. We're also really happy to collaborate with Coding Rights because they have quite an experience trying to tell stories about technology in general, about the ideas that we have about technology, the imaginations that we have about technology, and how really to flip them over, think about them in different ways, in more decolonial ways, in more inclusive ways. And so this project was really, trying to flip the idea of future and past, and with an interesting concept of talking to yourself to the past. So maybe we can play the clip first, and then we can hit a question to Lucia, who's here with us.
Sorry, I realized I was muted and it doesn't play my sound if I'm muted.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, welcome to the library Carolina Maria de Jesus. How can I help you?
Yes, please. Could you tell me where I could find the science fiction or fantasy section. I'm looking for a book by Octavia Butler called Kindred.
You'll find it in the science fiction section on your left. .io.
Thank you. Isaac Asimov, Isaac Asimov, Isaac Asimov, Asimov. Butler! Octavia Butler! Here it is!
Sophia is so excited to finally find that book that it slips through her fingers and hits the ground. As the book falls, a yellowish paper drops from the last page and it catches her attention. Sophia picks up the book and shyly opens the paper.
This is weird. What is this?
I realize we have 2 clips.
The Tech Brotherhood promotes new forms of high-speed communication based in new forms of contact. Ways of communication that don't need bodies. Telepathic channels of communication. This technology was implemented all over the planet. It was sold as a huge innovation at a very low price. The Tech Brotherhood used it to say that they were solving everyone's problems, but their solutions complicated things further. In fact, it all started like this optimistic, cool, innovative thing. But as they gained more and more power, everything became unsafe, difficult. These telepathic communication channels ended up being used to threaten women, spread lies and hate, and also attack anyone who behaved differently from the world vision of the Tech Brotherhood.
Yeah, there were 2 separate clips from the Brazil episode. What Eliana said really resonated with me. The idea of working with artists and with art, it really opens your heart and your head to think about things differently, to tell different stories. And I feel that with this project, we all got to be a little bit of writers, a little bit illustrators, a little bit, hosts, using our voices. It's been really beautiful. And so taking back to what we were saying about coding rights, which have been doing this kind of really out of the box work, I wanted to ask you, Lucia, you who were so involved in the writing, who wrote this together with Joanna, can you tell us a little bit more about what was exciting and what was challenging in telling this story? We have the future, the past, technology, things that are happening, things that could possibly be happening, and so on. Can you tell us more about the process? Lucia, I think that you're muted. We can't hear you. No, not yet.
And now?
There you go. Yes,
Oh, okay.
Now we can hear you.
Great. Hello, everyone. Sorry for this.
No worries.
Technologies. Well, with Joanna, we love to collaborate. We used to do it, and we try to do this kind of creative projects around technology. And we are talking for some years, I think, or yes, like 4 or 5 years. We are talking about how to disrupt in a way the linearity of time. So we were thinking like how to disrupt this linearity, and then we bring this character that is Sophia, that received a letter from herself, but herself of the future, like giving some advices related with technology. Well, it was very challenging to translate in a way all these ideas of this story to sound. And in this sense, Jimmy and yourself, Laura, and Marianne, Elena, and the other Laura were super supportive, helping us to reach, to translate all these ideas to a just sound project, because we used to work with images. In fact, Clarot was doing all these beautiful GIFs, animated GIFs. But yeah, I think this was the most challenging thing to do this translation.
Yeah, like writing a little bit to the ear, because we're so used to writing for the paper and describing things in a way, and this is really thinking of somebody who's going to listen and not see anything.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much, Lucia.
Yeah.
I do feel like we also threw everyone who was a part of this sort of into it immediately, and then we figured it out as we went. And as Laura said, we ended up doing a lot more things than we thought we could, and I think stretched the boundaries of what we thought our own skill sets were. You'll hear many of us as like the background voices, so I think it made us all step a little bit outside of our comfort zones.
Which is a good thing.
Yes, exactly. So we'll pass, it's probably gonna play this again. We're gonna go to our last project. Nope. I don't want to play it again. There we go. Our last project is called Crime and Prejudice, and it was produced by Paradigm Initiative. I believe that Dada is on the call still. I can't see anything because I'm sharing screen, but it was written by Cynthia Corafor. And the question that I have for you, Dada, because your communications team, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the dream teams I always reference when I'm talking about doing this kind of storytelling for this work. If you have not seen Paradigm Initiative's short films, I think it was 2 years ago, but you can correct me, Dada. You came out with the first one, which was Training Day. And it was based on your annual Digital Rights in Africa report. And then another came out this year, Focus, and I believe there's another on the way. But they take all of the themes from those reports and bring them to light. And I know they've had quite a great reception in Nigeria and in Africa and across the world. So I just want to ask you, Dada, about the process for doing the radio drama, because I know that's a little bit different, but also how your team thinks about new audiences and new stories for this work.
Okay, thank you so much, Laura. I just want to say it's been amazing listening to the all radio drama series, and particularly that of Data Curie. I said it was scary, but then I loved it. So well done to the team. The Communication Paradigm Initiative, but we ventured into creative digital rights advocacy in full swing with the production of our short films. And we've had output of skits and now the production of our first radio drama series, thanks to Internews and the Heinrich Boell. So what we currently do with our short films is that we base them on our annual Digital Rights and Inclusion in Africa reports, like you said, Laura. And these reports usually, sometimes they change from year to year. They capture challenges and situations that affect the digital rights and inclusion space in Africa, and various thematic areas such as privacy, freedom of expression, access to information, segmentation, digital transformation, affordability, gender, and all of this within existing legislative frameworks. So our last two films, Training Day was the first. It was released in 2019, and Focus was released last year. So it was built around the themes of illegal surveillance, privacy, and internet disruptions. And with the radio drama now, Crime and Prejudice, having its central theme based on the importance of data privacy and protection, what we did was just to amplify the need for the respect of digital rights, in particular personal privacy, as unseen drama. So what we've learned so far with digital rights storytelling practices is that through continuous advocacy like this, everyone can be fully aware of their rights and know when they are being exploited, when their voices are stifled, and also the importance of digital responsibility, which is very, very significant for a rights respecting Africa, and even for a rights respecting Africa, global rights respecting Africa. So everyone is aware of their rights, knowing what to do, how to stay safe out there, protect their privacy and also their data. So this is what we've been able to learn so far and putting together our short films in the past. Thank you.
Thanks, Dada. And I'm going to play a clip and then ask a really quick follow-up question, if my computer will agree with me.
Crime and Prejudice is an audio series by Paradigm Initiative on the importance of digital data rights, privacy, and data protection.
On today's edition of Crime and Prejudice, nobody is safe.
Okay, I already said I was coming. Yes.
Good day, madam.
Good day, sir. Can I help you?
I am Detective Briggs, and these are officers Udo and Pratt. We are with the NCPC.
Good day. NCPC?
Yes, please. We would like to see Dr. Ewem. Is he around?
Huh?
Your husband would like to see him.
I am Dr. Ewem.
Oh, well, doctor, you've been invited to our headquarters for a chat.
A chat? I'm sorry. Are you sure you don't have the wrong address or something?
Did you not just confirm that you are Dr. Ewem, Dr. Sydney Ewem?
Yes, but this has to be a misunderstanding because how am I being invited by the NCPC? What is the chat about?
I think you would find the details you are looking for in here.
I see. 1 minute. I need to make a phone call.
Crime and Prejudice.
So that is the beginning of the first episode. And I know that it aired in Nigeria, and following that scene, it lights off a big scandal. So Dara, I know that as part of doing this project, you also ran a couple focus groups to find out about how people listen to it and how it changed the way they thought about some of these things. Do you have any quick takeaways or insights from the focus group?
Okay, yeah, I do. So one particular one that stood out for me was when one of the listener was like, he became self-aware, he became more self-aware about his rights. So to speak people who are not familiar with the digital rights ecosystem in Africa and Nigeria particularly. And after listening to this radio drama, they were more energized, more empowered. Yeah, let me use the word empowered, because they kept saying, oh yeah, I'm more aware now. What I didn't know, I know more than I knew back then. So they're like, yeah, it's important that my data should be protected. It's important that rights should be respected. So basically it's just self-empowerment and becoming more aware.
Thanks so much. All right. I think that is all we have for the clips, but I also wanted to make sure that we take the time to acknowledge Jimmy Carver and Elena Casas in particular, but also Laura Vidal, who you've been hearing from along with me as my always and perpetually wonderful co-host. They were the editing and sound design team. Jimmy and Elena, I just want to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about your experiences working across everybody in this team and bringing all of the audio together, making these sonic universes. I don't know who would like to go first, but feel free to unmute.
Hi, is Elena here? I don't see her.
I thought she was coming. Well, then pass it over to you.
Yeah. This was fantastic. I had a great time. It's really, so I made the sound effects and mix for the 3 Latin American episodes, and they were all so different and weird and just super interesting. So really all I did was lift up this, try to put the story front and center with the beautiful voices that were happening. And it was a joy. It was a joy to do most of the time. Sometimes it's difficult. You know, most of the time it was really good. And I'm really, really proud of what we did together. So
amazing. Thanks, Jimmy.
Yeah.
I cannot believe that we hit the exact hour point and have gone through the presentations and actually have a half an hour for Q&A like planned. So I see that there's been 75 comments in the chat. I'm going to stop screen sharing so I can at least look at some of those things. But if anyone wants to unmute and say anything, that includes people who participated in the projects or anyone in the audience, feel free to do so.
I think I'm gonna take a really small space to let you know that some people have been sharing directly with me their emails, because we're going to be publishing a blog post very soon, you know, after this conversation, and to talk about this experience and kind of summarizing the project a little bit. So you can always follow us in our socials. Mainly we're on Twitter. It's I just shared it. It's at Internews ADAPT. I'm going to copy it and paste it again on the chat, but do feel free to send me directly your email so I can send you the blog post once is up, so you can just, you know, follow it. And finally, to say that one of the things that we were so happy to do with this project is really to think about, you know, ways to talk about these issues, and you know, to step out and not be scared of, you know, recording ourselves, being a little bit actors, a little bit playwrights, a little bit you know, illustrators, to call on other people that can definitely open the way to think about these issues in a different way with different language. I think this conversation deserves it and needs it, and I think, you know, for organizations like ours and people that who are so passionate about these issues, it's a really good thing to think about how we tell new stories, you know, how we make data and issues about technology something that is an everyday thing, because at the end, it is an everyday thing.
Say too, one thing that we really want to do with this project, and we'd love to hear from all of you about your own projects, is think about how to collect information about what works, how to get better at this, and also how to have fun and bring joy to the work. I think one thing that we kept saying over and over again, no matter how hard it was, there were points at which we had to re-record things and get a new voice actor, and it became crazy, and we changed the production schedule I don't know how many times, but through it, you know, it was fun. We were learning things. And I actually want to pass a question over to Sabina, because Sabina's been along for the whole crazy whirlwind since I made a slide deck that before this even existed, and has really supported us through this. I know that Heinrich Boell's objectives are really to think about norms in the space, and the GDPR has played such an important role in pushing for more regulations and more laws around the world. Can you talk a little bit about, as like, you know, the European in the room, how you see culture shifting in Europe, and also how it's changing when it comes to privacy and respect for our data rights?
Yeah, thanks, Laura. And I'll keep it brief because I want to hear from others here as well. Yeah, first of all, again, it's been really great to see all these clips together, and really big congratulations on everyone who worked on those. They're really great. And they also show how those stories need to be told in different cultural contexts, right? I mean, it's an issue that affects us all, but it affects us in our own culture. And so I forgot to mention earlier, and this may be a fun fact for some of the group, that our current and relatively new co-president of our foundation in the past was a member of the European Parliament and was quite instrumental in getting GDPR passed there. His name is Jan Philipp Albrecht. And so I think there is a lot of pride, like in our organization and among green circles in Europe, that GDPR has basically inspired this debate and has driven this debate and has led to more recognition of data privacy worldwide. But I'm really like so encouraged to see that so many countries are shaping, and there's no one size fits all, right? So everybody is now like, all these countries are shaping and drafting their own legislation and implementation and have to find their own pathway. And I think that's really important. And that's also what this project shows, because you chart your way in your own context. And this is wonderful. Yeah. And by the way, the vacuum cleaner monster analogy in the Data Chiri episode, I think every 3-year-old child and every dog would agree that that's the most terrifying monster you could think of. So I just thought that was really funny. Anyway, I'll pass it over to others. Thank you.
I think Lauren's had her hand raised. I don't know if this cartoon went across borders, but there was a cartoon called The Brave Little Toaster, and the vacuum cleaner was the villain. And it was the scariest movie for me as a child. So absolutely. It's over to you, Lauren. Feel free to unmute.
Thank you. I just have a question regarding how each comic, how you all would classify each comic differently than the next comic. So what I'm really asking is how are cultures or countries perceived differently through these comics? Because I mean, the main goal is to bring awareness to global privacy. But I think that each country, the Europeans, the United States, we all are at different places in terms of our fight for global privacy. How would you regard each comic as achieving that broader goal of global privacy, but still, understanding that, we all are at different places. We all have different experiences with technology. Some countries are more advanced than others. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a blog post on this, and I want to be clear in understanding that we all have the same fight of fighting for these protections, but we all have to understand that, maybe Ecuador is not where the United States is, but, we need to come together and understand how we can still achieve global privacy concern.
Yeah. Thanks, Lauren. I will also say that Ecuador has passed a data protection law, and we have in the United States have yet to do that. So I always like to think about that. But yeah, I think that's a great question. We're all kind of at different stages of the process. And one thing that is always frustrating for many people in this space is how long it takes to get anything done on this area. And so one of the reasons that we wanted to have each of these stories be created by the organizations that are in each of these places and have them really tied to like local realities, conversations that are happening right now, like mythologies, but you still see all these common themes pop up. I don't know if anyone from the different teams wants to speak to that question as well, how you see. I think that's a big thing that came up in the wider project we've been working on, is like, how do we push forward things in our own countries, but also think about what cuts across, and that includes narratives and also strategies. So I don't know if anyone else wants to pop up and speak to that as well.
I just wanted to add something very, very small, and it's the idea of culture around privacy. I think that's a very important issue that oftentimes it's difficult to put on paper or to explain. Privacy is different in every context, and even the legislations have historical context that might not be shared, but they could be understood. I think one of the ideas also behind this project is to put together stories that you can see what are the things that are complex and particular of each context, and which are the elements that you can see they are in common, because at the end, culturally or not, we're all evolving and influencing each other and inspiring each other.
Yeah, I think in the last season of the podcast, one thing that came up in some of the early episodes was just that every language seemed to have a funny saying for I have nothing to hide, or that was a refrain that everyone heard over and over again, and combating that was like very much something that we started to think about early on as cutting across. I want to quickly, I know we have another question from Monica as well, but I want to quickly shout out to Elena, who joined. Elena is was our superstar on our editorial team, and pass it over to her if she has something she wants to reflect on as part of this project. Really, she's like the do everything person.
Hi, Lau. Sorry, I'm late. I was lost in the time zones. I think the most difficult thing was fight the data cheating, fight the Comeval, and at the same time, we deal with the audio quality and the music and the actors. We were doing all the things at the same time. Everything is in his own niche, but well, I think that was the most difficult thing.
Thanks, Elena. I also saw David here. I know David was our one of our voice actors on the Datachiri project. Hi, David. He's got a very distinctive voice, so you will recognize him if he unmutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great
no, thank you guys. Thank you for the invitation. Yeah, thank you for the invitation to participate. When you guys sent me the script, I really wasn't too aware with the project. And then when I started doing some research and y'all send me the audio files, I think one of your creative persons sent me her recording of how she wanted it read. And it totally shifted my perspective and approach to this. So it's very interesting. Thank you guys. It's been a pleasure working with you. And I hope to continue to meet more of you guys that are here on Zoom and follow you guys and see what all this is about. Greetings from Austin, Texas, by the way. Saludos.
Thanks, David. That was Laura Vidal, and she sent me the recording she sent you, and she told me that she scared her husband recording them.
Yeah, when I was this is my home studio. This is where I record from. I had to pretty much do exactly what she did. So my kids walked in and they were like, "Is everything okay?" And I told my wife, "I'm going to record a script. If you hear me yelling, don't freak out. It's just a voiceover." So yeah, I totally know.
David was the prophet yelling.
Mm-hmm.
I'll pass it over to you, Monica.
Hola. Hello. Regards from Spain. First, congratulations. And I have a question for the Datachiri. Sadly, the lack of data regulations is a thing that connects us in South America, right? So I like it how you treat that, but have you received any kind of government response about this? What to show us here? Because yeah, you said something like the government is like not very, it's not very helpful with this thing that data regulations. So have you received any feedback about it? Just that. Thank you.
I don't know if Joaquin or Eliana, you want to take this?
Maybe about the government response. Maybe Eliana could talk us a little more than I can do. But in the case of the comic is very new, so we are just about to receive the feedback from government or from the audience. But maybe,
sorry, I just saw that you have shown that before there.
No. But
okay.
maybe Eliana could talk us about the reactions here in Bolivia about the work that Internet Bolivia has received.
Her connection was not so good, but I will say, and I'm sad Ricardo's not here, from Fundación Ciudadanía y Desarrollo in Ecuador, when we talked about they're launching the audio fiction in Quito in a local launch, and they're doing it alongside the launch of their draft regulations reports. So they're suggestions for what the regulations should be, and they're inviting policymakers and they're inviting youth. And they also have a stand-up comic who will be starting off the whole event. So I think for them, this really made them think about how to lighten the mood and also bring new people into some of the higher level conversations as well. So they'll, we played the clip earlier of the CEO saying, what is a country that has a law but not regulations? And having those people in the audience, I think, will be really interesting to hear about. So we certainly want to follow up with everyone on how the receptions of these products have been and how they pushed it. I know also Internet Bolivia is doing a follow-on event of their launch with a street festival with a number of artists responding to the data chiri. So the idea is to continually push the boundaries of where these products can go. Lucy, I don't know if you want to speak at all to Coding Rights. I know Coding Rights is always pushing the boundaries of who they talk to. And I know that the election is happening in Brazil right now. And so Joanna Verón is very distracted right now. And we're aware that data protection is probably not on the agenda at the moment. But I don't know if you want to say anything to Coding Rights work in this area and conversations on it with the government.
Well, I used to collaborate with Coding Rights in the more artistic and creative projects, but they work in a more, I don't know how to name it, in a more institutional and legal way. They used to be in many networks working in this very difficult context that is Brazil right now. Yeah, this Sunday is the election, so they are super busy with this because yeah, in Brazil, and I am from Chile, and recently in Chile it was the same with the last election. Internet are very crucial in the results, so it's very important to work and to fight in a way to have some basic laws about some regulation, media regulations. So, well, Coding Rights is working always in many different levels, and well, they are yeah, they are busy now with this, but maybe you can like look also in their website and in their social networks, because they are always like talking about all these things and working with some regulations and with many networks to reach it also.
Yeah, I'll also shout out to Elena as well. As part of their advocacy for the ADAPT project, when they thought about policymakers, it's always thinking about at the national level and passing laws, but they've done quite a lot of work at the municipal level, working with municipal policymakers to understand data rights and think about that audience specifically in events that appeal to them. So I think when we think about who are change makers, decision makers, we can expand how we're thinking about this and what narratives work and what venues work. And so again, really eager to hear from anyone in the audience too, if you have experiences that you have or projects you've worked on that also you think are pushing the boundaries. Feel free to unmute, and it doesn't have to be a question. I know everybody's afraid of being the person that asks a question that's not a question, but feel free to do that, calling you out. Go ahead, Lauren. I don't know if that's an old hand or a new hand, but welcome to unmute.
Thank you so much, Laura. This is a new hand. So I'm thinking a little bit more about the municipal level. And, I'm from the United States, so I'm not familiar with how the Brazilian government operates. But in terms of the municipal level, what things do you think are important for the municipalities to be considering? Because while, to my understanding, government is a cohesive process whereby the municipalities are directly impacted by the national government, there are disparities sometimes between the laws and how they, how they extend or impact the country as a whole. Like various municipalities might be operating in different ways, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So a little bit more information about the municipalities and how those, the fight for global privacy rights is positively and negatively impacted, I guess, depending on, how national governments perceive each municipality.
I'll just quickly say, I think it really depends on what municipal laws are in different places, how decisions are made. I mean, I know in the United States, we don't have national legislation yet, but we do have a variety of states that have passed legislation. So I think, it's thinking about in our partners in Nigeria, Khadija, who's been our fellow on our project as part of Paradigm Initiative, a lot of their work has been thinking about the regional data protection laws that are being passed. So again, it really depends on each country. And I know that, and Eliana, please feel free to unmute if you have a good stable connection, because you can talk to this much better than I can. But I know in Bolivia, there was a political crisis when and they had spent a lot of time, Internet Bolivia had spent a lot of time working with the government, the previous government, to draft legislation. Then there was the political crisis. And so rather than not do anything in this area, it was a strategic choice to really think about what was happening in specific municipalities and to go to some sort of, go local. So that was in part the rationale for that pivot. But even as there have been opportunities at the national level recently for debate on this issue, they've also continued to do their work in that area. I don't know if anybody else wants to add to that when it comes to your country or your context and work on a municipal level.
I can add some thoughts on like why is it so different in the approach, the way that data protection is approached in the US, for instance, or even in Europe. In Latin America, most of these laws, where they exist, are at a national level. They are not handled by municipalities at all, or by states, because data protection is considered to be a matter that affects human rights, and therefore it is restricted, and it can only be ruled by Congress at a national level. And so the problem, more than the difference between like one place in the country or a different place, it is mostly the non-existent or the insufficiency of these laws that exist at a national level, or then in some places, there are still a couple of countries in Latin America that don't have data protection laws at all. And so, of course, it's an absolute mess to have the implementation of the technology without any framework existing previously. Like it's already like that's spilled milk. There's nothing to be done there. It's just a disaster. So when we talk about, and I think all of the episodes approach this in a different way, but all of them have something about this. And this bridge that we were talking about, this gap, is mostly about having a law that it's oftentimes easier to pass. Mostly it's required by international covenants and that kind of situation. And the development of this law, reglement, the specific regulations that are contained in a separate law, that is where the actual specificities of how that is applied and the sanctions and the specific thresholds, that never happens. So we will have like 6 years with the law existing and not the specific regulations, where the law is actually not applicable at all, so you can't really do anything. That's the key Latin American problem, I think, and it is very different from places where this is approached at a federal level, and it varies widely. So it creates very complex issues in application.
And I'll do another shout out. Laura Vidal just put a link to the podcast that we produced about the strategy in Bolivia, thinking about the municipal laws, but also we published a report that was interviewing civil society and regulators in Africa and Latin America about some of the similar challenges that they face in doing implementation and enforcement. All of these things are like decidedly unsexy sounding, but they're really important if you do want to think about parsing, what can we do together? What are some challenges that we face? I put a link in the chat. And if anybody can think of sexy ways to talk about regulations, please reach out to me.
I don't think I can say anything sexy, but I can say something as a learner of these issues, because I think nobody ever stops being a learner of this. But one thing that really struck me when we were working on an episode that you can also check out about Facebook and how its privacy regulations have changed and how they play out in different countries. We spoke to a really dear colleague from Paraguay who, that's when I learned that, this big push for regulations and for law, it's one step out of many others, that you can definitely have one law passed and then the law can take a life of its own. So to me, it was very important to understand that there are many actors in this, because there's the regulation, all the side that has to do with debates, regulations, law, government, in the level that, that is appropriate for each country. But at the same time, there's the citizen level and how they push for different changes and how things happen and how they protect themselves, plus the companies and how they act in different ways in different places. Because you had companies like Meta, for example, acting in a way, say in Europe, under GDPR, but in very, very different ways in Latin America where there's no GDPR, fully knowing that there are better ways to implement, their technologies, but still not doing it because the law doesn't say so. So it's a very complex thing. And I think that's why it's so interesting to look at this from so many national and cultural perspectives.
I can link to that episode as well.
Check out our episodes from the last season.
Yeah, go ahead. Here you are. Hi, Elena.
Yeah. Hi. Perhaps to add to what Laura was sharing, is also we found also this other level of government, like in the municipal level. So it's not only talking about national, but also national advocacy, let's say, but also what perhaps the municipal level can do to advocacy in the national level. So we are trying that strategy. I'm not sure if it will work or not. We hope that, but yes, we also understood that there are some jealousy, let's say, from the national level to be the one who are making innovations in the law. But when it comes from the municipal level, perhaps they will think that it's better to cope and to improve that. I'm not sure it would work, but yes, we also can work with this level, not only like civil society and artists and then journalists and different like in a multi-stakeholder model, but also with the municipal level. And yeah, we found people who are very interested in the government in the local levels. And yeah, we are making our bet.
Thank you so much, Elena. And I know that following the politics in Bolivia has always made my head spin, but whenever I talk to the Internet Bolivia team, they're like, well, the president of the Senate is from this place, and so if we talk to these people, this is how it sways, but if the election goes the other way, this person's the person to talk to. So I think, when you think about strategy and where policy innovation can happen, yeah, it's been really wonderful to see your process. I know we only have a minute left, so I just want to end by thanking you all for joining on a Friday and thanking all of the people who spoke and participated and supported this sort of insane project. And I want to thank you all for in the future, creating really amazing work and continuing to take this stuff forward, reaching out to us, being a part of these conversations. We have dropped a bunch of links, but you can get to our content by searching Privacy is Global. We're on pretty much every podcast streaming application you might use. We're also on YouTube now. So if you don't like podcasts, you'd rather watch our looping GIFs over and over again or listen to them on the YouTube app, you can do that as well. And please do feel free to reach out to us, suggestions, comments, things you're working on. We're really excited to take some of this work forward. So thank you again to everybody.
Thank you so much.
Can I ask whether or not this this stream will be available to our emails? I know I did receive, I gave my email to Laura and that has been helpful. How quickly do you think this might be available for us to view via email?
So we should have it, I think, by next week. Probably we'll put it on YouTube and then we can send everybody the link. But yes,
thank you.
Of course. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much for coming.
Have a wonderful weekend.
Same to you.
Gracias.
Thanks.
Gracias.
Gracias.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.